Hi, legends. It is Leslie here, Essentially Active, the face of, and it's the 29th of December 2025, which is the very last Monday of 2025. So I'm taking this opportunity as the last Medal Monday of the year to do my 2025 year in running recap. And what I'm going to be doing is using my medals. Yeah. So I have here my pile of medals of the different events I've done this year. And I don't have these in any order. It's all a bit of a mess, as you can see. So what I'm going to be doing is grabbing a medal, sharing my experiences. So part of the reason why I love collecting my running medals, and I know it's not something that everyone does, but it's me using them as like a talisman for holding that memory of that day. And I firmly believe that from every run, and particularly every event and every race that we do, we learn something. And that learning, sure, it could be to do directly with our running, but more often than not, it's like a life lesson because running imitates life. Like running, life, hand together, we do this together and we learn a lot from running that we can translate into the real world. And so none of this video is scripted, not that most of mine usually are, they're very much off the cuff. But the plan here is I'm just going to pick up a medal and share what comes to me, whether it's the experience, whether it's the learning. And yeah, so this is going to be, a very non-AI year in review of my running. And this is going to be very specific to running, but you never know, you might get other non-running elements come out of this. So let's just get going. And what are we going to pick up first? And I'm literally picking up whatever comes to mind. Alrighty. This is Canberra Marathon's medal. So this was April 2025. And it's a run that I've now come to want to do every year. So in terms of marathon courses, this is probably my favourite. It goes initially around like the capital area of Canberra and then out to Yarralumla, out to the lake, and then along the freeway and then back to finishing in that area in front of Old Parliament House, like not directly in front, but a bit further away. I have this silly goal, it might not be that silly, but I want to do 10 of these. And so this year was my sixth completion of a Canberra Marathon or 50K. I did the 50K one year. The thing about the Canberra Marathon is that there's all of these out and back sections. So you get to see other people a lot coming the other way, which for me I find particularly awesome because being from Sydney, it's about 3 hours drive from Canberra, you get a lot of Sydney-siders going down, and so a lot of people that are from the running community in Sydney are running the Canberra Marathon as well. And so you see lots of people that you get to say g'day, you get to cheer them on. And I love that about the course. The other thing I love about the Canberra Marathon course is that it's got this undulating nature where you've got like lots of hills, but none of them are crazy. And it just keeps your body feeling pretty good because you're not sort of using the same muscles all the time. So there's lots to love about it. It's pretty low key. It's April, so you've generally trained through summer into this. It's typically a little bit colder than what you've trained through, so you typically enjoy the weather, although there have been a couple of years where the weather's been a bit insane. The other thing with the Canberra Marathon is the last few years I've done it as purely a training run for other trail events. And so the difference there is I'm not racing. I haven't actually raced Canberra for a while because I've either been pacing or just doing it as a training run. So I'm ticking the box in doing a marathon distance, but the times don't reflect how it feels because it hurts. Like it really hurts because I'm not really used to doing road stuff much because I have been for the last 4 years really focused on trails. So a lot of it hurts, but I like it. We get to see people, and it's just a really fun experience out of all of that. And I guess what I learned there is that you can make and approach an event any way that works for you. Like you can do events and you don't have to race them, they can fit into your plan. And you learn a lot by realigning your expectations. When you stop chasing a PB in an instance where you're not actually racing, like there's a lot of running maturity that comes from that. And I guess the life lesson there is, invest in results where it matters and take the rest as being about experience. And that's the Canberra Marathon for me. Okay, on to the next medal. And I'm trying not to look, and we'll just pull out what we get. Oh. Okay, what we have here is Mount Stromlo. So this is going to the other end of the year, and this is the Mount Stromlo 30K, and I'm going to grab the other Mount Stromlo medal that I have from this year, which is the 5K. So the Mount Stromlo is a trail run down in Canberra. So ironically, my 2 times I've gone to Canberra, I've pulled out twice in a row. Yeah. Now, I love to do Mount Stromlo. Again, this is a training run. Typically, it's been a run in the lead up to the COSI 100 in the last few years. So that's probably the last 3 years I've done the 30K. Before that, I've done the 50K. And that's got a whole other story. But this year came in, so we do the 30K on the Saturday and I do the 5K with hubby Kilner on the Sunday together. What do I love about this? So this is a race about community and connection. There are some of us that do it every year, and we might not see each other for 12 months, but we see each other on the trails and it's like yesterday. It's also a big part of the Indigenous Marathon Foundation, and Rob De Castella is a patron and he's there every year like as MC, and you get to interact with so many awesome people. Funnily enough, this race teaches you that you don't need to be having fun to get results. So a lot of people will say how the course is like super exposed, super hilly, and it totally is. You're out there and you're going, this kind of sucks. You feel it in your soul that this sucks, this is hard. But it's a reminder that you can do hard things. And it's a reminder that results don't always come from ease, from the comfort zone. And actually this year, out of all the years running this race, like that was top of mind for me. It's like, at one point, do I really want to come back? This isn't fun. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want to do the race. But it was a particularly interesting mindset moment, because if we are wanting to push our limits, pushing our limits might not always be fun. And this was the second time in 2025 that I had that thought go through my head. The other awesome thing is that towards the end, when stuff was getting tough, I was really having these moments with fellow runners out there on the trails, and I'm like, come on, guys, we're not giving up. Yes, we can totally walk this all the way back in, but we're not going to do that. So it's like, come on, let's, no one's left behind. No one's left behind. And so it was a group of 3 of us that were able to finish it together, which was really cool. And we connected in that moment. And in the end, I was able to turn this run around. So this run then became not about me. It became about working together to get a bunch of us to that finish line. And when you think about the origins of this run, which is based on resilience and connection and community after being an area being devastated by bushfire, and how we can do hard things and get through it, like the symbolism of the event and then what you experience as part of the event is pretty damn cool. And so, yes, I will be going back. We will be going back. Why? Because this isn't about things being easy. This is about pushing through your comfort zone and learning resilience and connecting with community. So that's what that race is already about. And I love how they've added a 5K on the second day, because it means that it's something that Kilner and I can do together, but it also is way more inclusive. Like the 5K trail event should never be underestimated by the fact that you can get so many more people engaged in a sport that wouldn't otherwise. So just throwing that one out there to any run directors that might be watching. Okay, back to it. Haha. Okay, speaking of 5Ks, that's the medal that's come up next, this is the 5K from the day before the Sydney Marathon. So we did this instead of doing parkrun, and this is another run I did with Kilner. And again, this was about connecting with community. Now, this isn't necessarily, I'm not going to share a learning here, but I'm going to share an experience. We're waiting in the corrals to start, and someone was wearing a Fearless 261 t-shirt. So for those of you that don't know, that is the charitable foundation from Catherine Switzer, which was the first official female finisher of the Boston Marathon. And so it turns out that awesome woman that was in that corral also ran the Boston Marathon in 2017 when I did for Fearless 261. So how cool is that? Running brings people together from around the world. So that's that one. Woohoo! Okay, I swear I didn't try and pick this one up, but this is the Sydney Marathon medal. So the day after the 5K, I ran the Sydney Marathon for the 6th time, and for the first time as a World Marathon Major. And there was nothing not to love about this day. Like Sydney having itself on the world stage was so special. So special. So a couple of things. Well, there's probably 3 things I want to mention. Firstly, hubby Kilner managed to get to 3 different places around the course, which was very, very cool. And compared to when I ran the London Marathon in 2023, I actually saw him. That's a whole other story. So that was very awesome. Now, the other thing that happened on this particular day is that I ended up running and meeting people in different places, which was very serendipitous. So things happen for a reason, and there were connections here that happened for reasons, and we had some fabulous conversations. I'm not going to share them because they are personal convos, but nothing was planned, but there were some really deep moments, which I will forever be grateful for. The other thing was I tried to use the Garmin Pace Pro, and I didn't understand it, and I thought I was ahead of schedule, but I was behind a schedule. Anyway, it didn't matter in the end. I wasn't really going for a time. But I was actually able to do some training on the road in the lead up to this race, which meant that my body didn't feel so crap afterwards compared to the Canberra Marathon. Finally, I did have a bit of a cramping situation happen around Mrs. Macquarie's chair, which was not fun. But again, that moment meant that I saw people I knew, and we actually had some connection. So all of these things happen for a reason. Now, speaking of running Boston back in 2017, there were people that I met in Boston in 2017 that came to Sydney because it was a major, and we were able to catch up and see each other for the first time as well. So yes, another road marathon, which is not my jam lately, but both the road marathons I ran this year were totally focused around connection. And I guess every run so far, I've been talking about connection. That might be the theme of the year, and it wasn't even planned. So let's keep going, shall we? Okay, here we go. Ridgey-Didge. So Ridgey-Didge was actually my first race of the year. This was in March. I did it as a training run in the lead up to the UTA Miler. It was a half marathon distance on the trail, local trails, local event. Got to see a bunch of people, obviously. For me, the learning behind here was that I was able to back up. So I did this run on the Saturday, then I did another training run on the Sunday, and I was actually able to do that, which is not something I'd been able to do in a while. So my training actually came, next level, and I was able to finish this race quite strong. So I was very much within myself the whole way. And from an ITRA rating perspective, so the International Trail Runners Association ranking, in this race it was actually one of my best of the year. So I think I tend to do good on the trails at this distance, but it's not typically what I do a lot of. But what I love here is being on local trails and pushing and using certain races as training, because they replicate conditions and they replicate challenges that might be coming up. And so this race being single trail, some pretty gnarly elevation, combined with runnable sections, was perfect lead-up training to the UTA Miler. So I loved it for that reason. And I will do it again. In fact, I want to do Ridgey-Didge again in 2026, but I'm just working out what distance that fits in best with the training, because, again, it's not something I'll be racing. It'll be something I'll be using as a training race. All right, next one. Okay. Speaking of training races, we have the Crater Rim Ultra. So this was over in Christchurch. It was 53 kilometres around their crater. So what I loved about the Crater Rim Ultra, so there's so much to say about this race. You start by taking a ferry across the bay, and then you're running around the bay, which is around the crater, back to the finish. New Zealand trails are different to Australian trails, particularly on the South Island, and I probably underestimated how tough this was. But I'm super proud of this. I finished second last. I was pretty much last for most of it. But at one point, I had 11 minutes to get into the next checkpoint, which was a kilometre away. And my average pace at that point was about 12 minutes per kilometre. And so I'm like, okay, let's just do my best. And I got in 1 minute ahead of the cutoff at that checkpoint. And I was able to push the right amount to finish within cutoff. And again, I didn't finish last in the end. Not that it would have mattered to finish last, wouldn't have mattered. But in years gone by, I don't know if I would have been able to beat and make that cutoff at that checkpoint. I'm super proud of digging deep and getting through when I could. Like, there was a certain point, probably from 30K onwards, where I knew it was going to be tough. And I held my nerve and I pushed the right amount to be able to hold my nerve and get there in the end. So I'm super proud of that. There were, again, a couple of fabulous connections there that I won't go into just so I don't make this video go way too long. But there was a connection at Race Bib Collection, but also one of the volleys ended up being a surrogate sweeper and helping me. Like, when I got in like 1 minute ahead, she then caught up to me and we nailed that last part together, and that was trail running at its finest. So how cool, like, I would totally do this again, Crater Rim Ultra. I think for me, this race will be an event that I can come back to as a gauge of where I'm at. Because if I can keep doing better at this race over in New Zealand, I think this will be the best gauge of how I'm going as a trail runner. And so I absolutely loved, and I've just been conscious that I'm closing my eyes a bit because it's special and it's almost, I'm bringing back that memory. But so I was able to dig deep, but then community came together. So there's so much here that was brilliant. So yes, Crater Rim Ultra would highly recommend, and actually every event that I've mentioned I would highly recommend. But I think Crater Rim, I've got to find a way to get back. I don't know if that'll be 2026, but yeah, it's a lot tougher over there on the South Island of New Zealand than it is over on the Australian trails. Okay, next one. All right, I've picked up the next two. So let's start with City to Surf. So City to Surf, I did this for the 10th time. 2 of those times, unfortunately, were virtual events. But this is the iconic fun run that goes from the centre of Sydney to Bondi Beach. A few things happened this December that made this race frame a little differently because of the finish. But this year was the first time in 10 years it was pouring down rain. We were running through puddles. But you just get there. Now, the thing about this race, and I guess what did I learn? I'm not gonna lie, we were soggy and wet at the end and cold. And what I greatly appreciated was the fact that I had accommodation at Bondi Beach, and so I could just go back to the accommodation, warm up, and so forth. Other people mentioned how in their drop bag, all their clothes got wet because of the rain. So I guess the key learning out of all this is that you either need to have someone supporting you with dry clothes, even if you don't expect it. And 2, if you're packing a drop bag, make sure it's a waterproof one inside. So clear plastic, waterproof drop bags. Let's do it. I will never not do this race. 80,000 people running from the centre of Sydney to Bondi Beach. Best fun ever. So yeah, if you can do it, do it. It will probably sell out pretty quickly. All right. Next one is the Portland Running Festival called Born to Run. Now, this is again another local one up in Lithgow Way, so past Lithgow. It's in an area where you can't run on these trails year round because it's private land. I did the half marathon and then the 5K with Kilner. The reason I do this race is that it's at 900 metres elevation. It's a combination of technical trail, runnable trail, brilliant training for the Ultra Trail Kosciuszko 100K, which I love to do. I felt particularly proud of the time in which I did the half marathon. Something that sort of sticks with me, though, something that really sticks with me, is that so I got Kilner to do the 5K, but it was super outside of his comfort zone. Some of the technical trails quite steep, and because he'd had a stroke a few years ago, it's a different experience to him than it is for me. Like, I kind of just fang it down those trails. He doesn't. All good. But I need to learn not to take for granted what I can do on the trails. And even though I'm often the one just trying to beat cutoff, like, it's super, super important that I can still do that, right? And I shouldn't just because I'm only beating cutoff sometimes doesn't mean that I don't have an ability there that most other people don't. So yeah, that's another one. The other funny thing, okay, let's speak about cutoffs for a moment. So when I was finishing the UTA miler, which was my first miler, and so I'm going to just grab that medal. All right, so the finishing video for the Ultra Trail Australia miler has me cheering me on, going, yay, she's beaten the cutoff. And it sounds like she's beaten the cuddle. So it's like the cuddle. And I was like, ha, that's hilarious. That's just Instagram doing its auto correct thing with its captions. But when I was doing the Cradle Rim Ultra in New Zealand, when people were talking to me about beating the cutoff, it sounded again like talking about the cuddle. It's all about the cuddle. And so I realised that no, the Kiwi accent for cutoff sounds like cuddle. And I'm not laughing in terms of making fun of it, but it was more like, no, that is not an autocorrect type scenario. That's just like different ways of pronouncing things sounds different. So if you ever hear a Kiwi talking to you about a cuddle, they might be talking about a cutoff. Anyhow, let's talk about the Ultra Trail Australia miler. So this was my first miler. It was in May. And this was an event where it's improbable but not impossible. So the cutoff for this was 44 and a half hours. I finished in 44 hours and 15 minutes. Third last finisher. But I did it. And I had literally had people tell me to my face that I couldn't do it. Yeah. But I knew that this was not a given, right? I knew it would be like this. And I'd done the numbers. I'm a big numbers person. And I knew where it would be tight. And I knew that it wasn't about doing this on my own. I knew I can do hard things. We can do hard things, people, but we don't have to do this on my own. So I had a team. I had obviously hubby, I had my mate Ali, and then I had my mate Jem, and I had crew, and I had a pacer. And I'm so grateful for their support because I was able to get in and out of checkpoints as much as I can. We were able to deal with unexpected challenges as much as we could. We were able to deal with heaps of mud. Boy, there was lots of mud on this course. But I did it and I finished. And yes, even afterwards, people were saying, I didn't think you were going to do it, but you did. And I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, I was pleased that they were proud of me. But it's like, yeah, it was the improbable becoming possible. So what's the key learning? So I took out so many learnings about running ultras. Firstly, you don't have to do it on your own. Let's pick up the people beside you. we need to hold the people that have faith in you tight. There were practical things about like what gear to use that suited me, what food, etc. But we can do hard things. We don't have to do them on their own. But if we don't attempt the improbable, it will never, ever, ever be possible. Because if we don't try, we don't know. And so I am so glad that I tried. I'm so relieved that I finished. I'm so grateful to have people on my team. I'm so grateful to have God be there through moments when you need to surrender. And I'll touch on that in a moment because there's only one more medal left to talk about. But yes, this is probably the biggest achievement of the year, because when the improbable becomes possible, it unlocks a new level. And I'm going to do this one again and see what I can do better. Okay, last medal of the year, and this is actually my last race of the year, my last event of the year, the Kosi 100K, so Ultra Trail Kosciuszko 100 kilometres. It was the 4th year in the row of me doing this, and each year has been a different course. Each year has had different conditions, and I finished this year 2 hours faster than last year, and I'm so chuffed with that result because it's just shown how much I've learned about myself. And when I sort of say learning about myself is I've learned what I need at the aid stations. I learned how to pace myself in a way that meant I could do the back half of this race so much faster than I ever have before, when I could compare different sections. And I was able to get to the last 14K when it started to rain and is literally all the way up Dead Horse Gap and then back down Merritts over an hour faster than the previous year. So that I was super pleased about. And I was able to interact with so many people doing their first 100K, their first time at Kosi. And in fact, even though I am a back of the pack runner, like across multiple races this year, people were like, I thought you were an elite. And so this doesn't necessarily reflect timing, right? So we often think of elite runners as being the fast runners, but what was honoured this year at both the Crater Rim Ultra, talking to people, and during Kosi was my last 4 or 5 years of experience running like 100Ks plus events, like so races that were 100K or more. And people are like, wow, you're an elite. And that wasn't sort of saying, wow, you're fast. Like when we dive deeper, it was about experience. It was about, okay, what have we been through and how can we share that with one another? Now, the things that we go through that teach us, it's about the conditions. And I'm so pleased that this ended up being the one by default, the medal that I picked up last. So the thing about the Ultra Trail Kosciuszko is that it's held in my favourite place in the whole wide world. I would never not go back there to race. On paper, it looks like it should be a fast, runnable, easy race. Not that any race is completely easy, but if you're comparing it to UTA and other 100Ks, on paper you go, yeah, this should be X. But it's never that. The conditions make the experience of this race so much more challenging than anything looks like on paper. So firstly, we've had everything in this race in the last 4 years, from snow to lightning, hailstorms up at the summit. And this year we had gale force winds up on the main range. We had snow drifts, and a bunch of other different things that really challenge the mind. So when you're running through these gale force winds, you just want to get out of the wind, and you're being buffeted off trails and across. This is reflecting life experience. We get pushed around, but we need to hold our course. And we need to have our mental resilience there to be able to maintain our course, our direction, and to be able to maintain our personal strategy. Because we don't need to go with the flow in terms of going with the crowd all the time. Like, when we know how to pace ourselves with life, when we know what we need to do and what tasks we have ahead, we don't need to be distracted or pushed off our path by the winds of life. This race and this experience really helped train that mindset in the context, the very narrow context of the running race itself. The other thing that I found particularly insightful, I guess that's the word, yeah, I found this very insightful, is how I was talking with a lot of people that were running COSI for the first time that had run on the cheese graters and fallen. Now, the cheese graters are these metal walkways that protect the alpine environment, and we call them cheese graters because when we fall on them, we're the cheese, right? So it can be highly damaging to the flesh. And like this year, I saw chunks of flesh on these metal walkways. I saw drops of blood everywhere. So a lot of people fell. And there were a couple of different encounters that I had where people had run on the cheese graters and fallen. So I don't run on the cheese graters because I am back of the pack, right? If I were going for a podium, yeah, I might run on them, okay? Just flagging it there. But for me, yeah. And I guess the temptation to run them, these sections are like the flatter sections. So these are the ones where you're trying to make up time compared to some of the other more technical climbs. So I guess that I understand the temptation, but I've just seen way too many falls on there, and I'm just like not interested in beating my body up in that way. I would rather take longer. So I always walk those. Now, when I was talking with people that were running COSI for the first time, they ran on the cheese graters and they fell. Literally, they said, like, I know people were warning us, but I didn't take it seriously. I didn't think it would hurt. And I thought, wow. So there's people like me offering advice about the race, and they're like, oh, she must be overreacting. She's not being useful. She's trying to be a party pooper. I don't know really what to say about that. Like, you guys can make up your own opinion there, but I had that conversation on more than one moment. And so I guess on one hand, I'm being told by people, wow, you're elite. I really value your advice. And then you've got, on the other hand, oh, you're overacting. I don't trust your advice. And so potentially the winds of that race we're buffeting between these two experiences, right? And it's like, hey, you guys take me how you want to take me. I'm just going to share my experience, share my advice. But I'm not going to let the winds of the world buffet me around. I'm going to hold my course because what I've ultimately done is I've learnt to surrender. Like a big thing that was going through my mind through COSI was listening. I wasn't listening to David Goggins, but I had listened to his 2 audiobooks throughout the year. And he says, when you think you're completely exhausted, you're only 40% done. And I was thinking, okay, I buy into that because from my studies in exercise science around how the brain interacts, I know that our brain wants to protect us. And so when we feel like we're done, we're actually not done. So I'm like, okay, I'm on board with the fact that, when we think we're done, we might only be 40% done. But then I had this whole question, where does that next amount come from? Right? Where does that next amount come from? Like, where do I find that extra 60%? I realized I can't force that. Like, yes, it's absolutely within me, but to access that extra bit, to access that 60%, I need to surrender to the higher power that is God. Yeah, I need to surrender to God because it's not me accessing that next part. I'm the vessel and God helps me get that extra bit. And when I realized that, I was able to push harder. But I wasn't pushing. I was moving harder. I was moving faster. So ultimately, I guess the theme of my running year was connection is probably the coolest thing about participating in running events. Having these connections and conversations is super cool. And it's another way of building resilience and sharing each other's knowledge. But ultimately, being able to surrender in the moment and surrendering some control enables ourselves to access a whole other layer of ability. And I guess in conclusion, I'm not going to let the winds of the wild world around me govern my goals and govern my path. So watch this space. I've got some cool stuff coming up for 2026. Won't be anything new. I'm going to be revisiting a bunch of these events, and so be interesting to compare the 2026 running year to this year because it's going to be very much like for like. So happy Medal Monday, happy 2025, and I'd wish you all the best for your coming running year. Mwah!